First of all, I have to speak with a disclaimer. I'm talking to you, not from the board of the Pima Council on Aging, as which I did for 42 years, but I'm talking to you as Marian Lupu, an 84-year-old. As an 84-year-old, I'm asked, why don't you want more police and fire? Don't you want to know that there will be a response in much less time than there is now? Don't you want to feel more protection? And I say, there are many things I would like. I have learned all my life, as most old people have, to live on a budget. That's why my house isn't in foreclosure. That's why, although there are many things I would like, I would love to travel around the world at this point. There are many things I would like. I know I can't afford it, and so I don't have it. And that's the same thing from my perspective toward the city and the county. And when I told Chuck Huckleberry that I would take some of his minutes, because you know me, if you give me a microphone, I always have much more to tell you. Chuck forgot to talk about some other costs to the city and the county. Like who's going to pay for the extra judges? And who's going to pay for the extra courthouses? And in Mr. City, who's going to pay for the extra cars? And who's going to pay for the extra fire trucks? And who's going to pay for the extra fire stations we have to build? And so, would I like more? Of course I'd like more, but I know better. So what am I asking all of you to think about? Well, in terms of what happens to older people themselves, let me explain how services for older people occur in this community through the Pima Council on Aging, which I know many of you have had occasion to use for your family, for your friends, or for yourselves, in terms of the information you get, in terms of the direct services. Well, mostly the Pima Council on Aging is funded through something called a federal program, the Older Americans Act. But how do you get the Older Americans Act into Tucson, Pima County? Pima County has always, in its budget, made a contribution so we can bring down the federal funds. This is one of those places that Chuck talked about as being an outside agency. And then the city does the same. And this is what we talk about outside agencies or social service agencies receiving a match. Now what happens to that? I didn't know that Chuck ran a better restaurant than I did. But about 1,000 people a day are receiving home-delivered meals. That's one of the bigger restaurants in town. And almost 500 of extra people come into the nutrition sites in parks and recreation centers. So that's one part of the system that would have to stop if the match doesn't come. Because frankly, with what's happened to most older people's budgets of rising cost and decreasing and the losses, I'm not sure that we can up the contributions to make what the city and the county contribute to bring in the Older Americans Act. What else do we have? About 1,500 people receive something through a social service system for which the city Pima Council helps fund the Pima health systems. And twice a week, people may receive housekeeping, case management. Really? Personal care, lifeline transportation, home adaptation, the services people need to keep them in their home. So you heard the scariness of what will happen to the city and the county budgets when the system grows so big. Let me tell you about what will happen when old people have to go on to Access and have the services, instead of being delivered in their home, delivered in the nursing homes. That means the state budget will go up. So not only will you have an increased rate in your county taxes and your city taxes, but also in your state taxes. So am I opposed to fire and policemen? Of course not. I just say, understand the moderation. The other thing I haven't heard the speakers talk about is that this is being put into changing the city charter. Somehow the city charter seems to me almost as sacrosanct as the Constitution. And maybe we shouldn't just willy-nilly change the charter and say there's nothing we can do for the future. That's the way it's there, and no matter how many people we have in Pima County grow, our population figures for the fire and the police are going to have to be at those ratios. Gee, I came here when this town was 200,000. I think it's better than $1 million now. So I ask of you, what can you all do? You'll have to fight the dollars that the developers. I looked to see who funded this program. And I saw developers, and I saw Mr. Click, and I adore Mr. Click. He's done so many wonderful things for the community. I don't think whoever approached him on this really let him understand, because he would run his dealerships on deficit, and I don't see why the city and county should. Thank you.